The mean future timeline. Hello. I'm making this video because I noticed something. Different science fiction franchises seem to describe similar situations at similar points in the future. Now this is obviously because they are all influenced by each other in some way, but that's a boring answer. Back in the now ancient days of the early 2010s, the famous YouTuber MatPat made a video called Game Theory, Video Games Predict Your Future, in which he compiled a bunch of different sci-fi video games into somewhat of a combined timeline. Not everything fit 100%, but a mean could be drawn. That, to this day, remains one of my all-time favorite YouTube videos. A similar video by Counterpoints 40K called the Unified Warhammer Timeline, did sort of the same thing. This time including sci-fi settings from many different media, and placing them within the timeline of Warhammer 40K, between the year 40,000 and the present. But that one doesn't match the dates given within the universes it mentions. For that reason, I can't exactly use it as a reference. Anyway, I too decided to use different sci-fi works as references to make a mean future timeline. Or at least I was going to, but it turns out most of the future has little to no works taking place within it, with pretty much every story taking place in one of three major future eras. These eras are also exponentially further into the future from one another, measured in hundreds, thousands, and millions of years respectively. There's also a pseudo-era or era zero, which is measured in decades. I don't know if I should include it though, as it is so close to the present that its beginning is a moving goalpost. Always just beyond the present/future boundary. If I am to include this era zero, I will call it the cyberpunk era. I assume you already know what cyberpunk is, since you watch this. Basically, this era is the final stage of the current era. All of today's trends have reached their worst possible point. Corporations control everything and digital technology is used by the powerful to keep themselves on top, all while the planet is being gutted for profit. For that reason, even though a lot of works are set in that time period, it feels a bit like when stories from the late 20th century take place in the 2000s. It's basically the present plus. This era though isn't long. By the 2200s at the very most, humanity reaches the first of the true future eras. An era I decided to call the good times, because of how relatively pleasant it is. This is the time of Star Trek and works inspired by it. The previous corporate dystopia has been overthrown, and an egalitarian socialist post-scarcity nation has united all of humanity. Also, humans coexist with aliens. Sometimes peacefully, other times not so. But mostly peacefully. There are still problems, but those are mostly external, as there will always be some cosmic threat or another throwing itself at the known galaxy. Other than that, however, it is as good as it gets for the average human citizen. Discrimination between different human groups is unheard of, social mobility is easier than ever before, and technology makes sure people's basic needs are met no matter what. Humans have also changed their behavior towards others, more resembling fantasy humans as described in the video. Fantasy humans aren't really humans by the Templin Institute, than the humans alive today. A humanity that has matured, so to speak. In most works of fiction, and indeed in the first sci-fi universe I ever made, this is what a civilization's endgame looks like. A cultural victory, one might say. Unfortunately, history doesn't have an ending, besides total extinction anyway. Even if progress reaches its pinnacle, and all of society's problems are solved, time will keep moving forward. And the mature become ripe, and eventually senile. Many times in the past, people have thought that they lived at the end of history. That the good times will last forever and life can only keep improving. Yet time and time again, that presumed end of history has turned out to be just as temporary as any other historical period. The good times of the future are no exception. For a multitude of reasons, this almost ideal society will begin to decline at the later half of the third millennium. Set in the 2500s, Firefly is actually a good portrayal of how this decline would start. Corruption has creeped its way into the previously assumed benevolent system, and extremist groups left unchecked for way too long have amassed so much power that are now impossible to suppress. This leads to a long period of little to no records, aka sci-fi references, that I have named the First Dark Age. This is similar to the ancient Greek Dark Age, in that it's both a period of regression as well as one we have next nothing written about. What we do know is that by the dawn of the fourth millennium, Earth and the other Sol system worlds are basically post-apocalyptic, as society there falls apart. Eventually these planets are forgotten with time, and potentially abandoned. All that remains from the pre-space age civilizations are the cultures and folklore humans took with them to the stars, though even they can't help but become unrecognizable as they change with time. There are other things we can hypothesize about that period based on works about different periods referring to them. A second cyberpunk era may or may not have happened during the First Dark Age. Most likely starting from the outskirts of the old human state, and slowly re-establishing a corporate oligarchy as the government was no longer able to regulate corporations. Or maybe they were holdouts from before the good times. We also can assume that a war between humans and machines occurred at the later millennia of the First Dark Age. It is unclear who the aggressors were. The humans of later eras claim it was the machines, but these sources are biased. Whatever the case, machines were targeted and eventually wiped out by the humans in a galaxy-wide crusade. This event coincides with the slow reunification of humanity. But this is a far different humanity than that of the good times. This dark age eventually passes, giving way to a new era for humanity. One I will call the Imperial Era, for reasons that will become obvious. This is the era works like Foundation, Dune, and works derived from them, mostly 40K, take place. This era is long, said to last as long as all of humanity's previous space ages combined. Beginning somewhere in the 10,000s and lasting for at least 10,000 years. Humanity controls a much larger part of the galaxy than they did during previous eras, as expansion and space colonization never truly stopped. This humanity, however, isn't a liberal democracy, but a feudalistic monarchy. With an all-powerful emperor at the very top, various nobles fighting one another for power and influence, and commoners whose lives may vary in quality but is far from ideal. I will further divide the imperial era into two periods. The early Imperium, and the late Imperium. The early Imperium is more analogous to ancient Egypt or China. Seeing the rise and fall of many different imperial dynasties succeeding one another, while technically being one civilization. The late Imperium is marked by the rule of an immortal, pseudo-divine superbeing over humanity. Basically what the previous emperors claimed to be. The rise of this being's reign also coincides with the rediscovery of Earth, with the superbeing either being from there, or having a connection with it. This period also lasts for an indeterminate amount of time, making the imperial era the only one where we know its middle but not its beginning or end. The end of this era is even more gradual than that of the good times. Depending on one's point of view, it may not have been a fall at all. Sure, the immortal emperor died somehow, and the once united humanity broke into various smaller factions over time, but it wasn't a fall of civilization. In fact, every crisis that could befall their civilization was dealt with, if the records from the next era are any indication. But, to quote the final episode of BBC's Walking with Beasts, no species lasts forever. Even if a species doesn't go extinct, it will eventually diversify into many different new species. We see the beginning of that all the way back in Dune, when human diversity was perhaps similar to that of modern-day dogs. Large variety but not yet speciation. This trend is likely to continue for millions of years until there's no more Homo sapiens, but only their weird descendants. One could even say that the humans went extinct by not going extinct. This leads to the third and final future era. The post-human era. Choosing a starting point for this era is absurd because of how vague it will be, but if I had to, I'd place it at approximately 3 million AD. The longest lived human species, Homo erectus, lasted for 3 million years. So I assume it would be reasonable to give a similar lifespan to Homo sapiens. Yes, it is possible to keep humans alive forever by augmenting them cybernetically or genetically, but those would be transhumans, so I don't count them. This era gives us works like Last and First Man, All Tomorrows, Man After Man, House of Suns, and the final part of The Time Machine, as well as various Doctor Who episodes. All Tomorrows is unique here as far as I know, since it does have humans lose to an alien adversary, which I previously stated didn't happen in this timeline. But hey, not everything fits 100%. As for how this era ends, well, I honestly don't know. My theory is that the various post-humans will keep on evolving, with species coming and going like animals of Earth's prehistory. As they do so, they will keep expanding outwards into space and be just too much for us to record. Some stories have human descendants be around by the time the sun goes out, or the stars themselves, or even when the entire universe reaches its end. While that is in fact more likely than have every single one of the post-human species go extinct, they would be so far removed from us by then that they would look nothing like humans. By the year 1 billion, for instance, our descendants will be twice as far removed from us as we are from the chordates of the Cambrian period. So don't even expect them to have a humanoid body plan. So I guess this concludes the timeline. Or at least the notable time periods I wanted to include. I think it should go without saying, but I don't actually believe that the future will play out like this. I thought it was fun to look at similarities in science fiction and try to mix different settings together. This got a lot longer than I thought, and I don't know how to close. So I'll just end the video here. Goodbye.